Hello, welcome to History Tea, a channel where I spill the tea on history. Today's video will be about the ruthless yet short-lived pirate career of Anne Bonny. If you're like me, you probably think pirates are pretty cool. Maybe you love the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and you've always wanted to learn more but never quite got around to it. Well, I got around to it. And I'm going to start off by telling you to erase the Pirates of the Caribbean movies from your memory because although they got certain things correct, at the end of the day it is based off of an amusement park ride, so, you know. The Golden Age of piracy took place between the mid-1680s to around 1730, mostly in the Caribbean. A sailor or privateer would typically become a pirate due to a lack of good jobs, specifically in the Royal Navy. I do want to point out before I start that nothing we know or think we know about Anne Bonny is a hard fact. Actually, a lot of people question whether she existed at all. Most of our information about her comes from a book called A General History of Robberies and Murders of the Most Notorious Pirates, written by Captain Charles Johnson and published in 1724. So again, to clarify, nothing I'm about to say is a cold hard fact, but I'm going to state things matter-of-factly because I don't want to say probably before every sentence. Anne Bonny was born in County Cork, Ireland. I've seen dates ranging from 1697 to 1702, but after making a timeline of her life, 1697 seems to make other dates of events in her life make sense, so for the purpose of this video, I'm going to say that she was born in 1697. Her father was a lawyer named William Cormack, and he had an affair with his housemaid, Mary Brennan. After his wife found out about the infidelity, he divorced her and moved in with Mary Brennan and claimed Anne as his child. So already Anne is born as an illegitimate child, something that's not a big deal today, but back then it was a whole situation. Moving in with his mistress and his illegitimate child was a bold statement, and William lost a lot of clients because of it. So he decided to move the three of them to the New World for a fresh start. I don't have a date, but I think Anne was anywhere from a newborn to maybe 3 years old when they settled in Charlestown in Clarendon Province, which I'm not entirely sure I'm saying that correctly, but either way, today it is now known as Charleston, South Carolina. In approximately 1710, when Anne was only 13 years old, her mother died from typhoid fever, which at that time, death was very common and people were dropping like flies left and right from one thing or another, but death still has an effect and Anne didn't handle it too well. Supposedly, she stabbed a servant girl after having an argument with her, and on another occasion, after a boy tried to force himself on her, she beat him so badly that he had to be hospitalized and was bedridden for days, which the first one is like not cool, but the second one, you go girl. I mean, in 1718, a 21-year-old Anne fell in love and married a lowly sailor and small-time pirate named James Bonny, against her father's wishes, of course, because, you know, this isn't a movie where a governor's daughter would be like, "Daddy, I love him," and he's like, "Well, he's a blacksmith," which is already not, like, a suitable suitor. And then she would be like, "No, he's not. He's a pirate," as if that made it better. Anyway. Her father wanted her to be a fine lady and supposedly had even found her a good suitor. So he was already mad, and then that made it even worse, I'm assuming. So he turned her away from his home. But that's okay, because new husband James moved the two of them over to New Providence in the Bahamas. It was in New Providence that Anne started to make friends with lots of pirates. And while she was doing that, James was working for the government as an informant, giving them the names of pirates, much to Anne's dismay. This was an interesting time in the pirate world because there was a new governor in the Caribbean that was really cracking down on piracy, Governor Woodes Rogers. This was actually the man that was responsible for bringing the golden age of piracy to an end. I just wanted to let y'all know who he is real quick because he will be mentioned again in this video. One of the pirates Anne made friends with and started an affair with was Captain Calico Jack Rackham. He had just become the captain of the Ranger after staging a mutiny against his former captain, Captain Charles Vane, whom he branded as a coward. He was in New Providence after receiving a royal pardon. He had captured a Jamaican ship in view of Port Royal and took advantage of the new amnesty deal offered to pirates. If you pled your case and were offered the royal pardon, you could live your life as a free man as long as you never returned to piracy, and if you did and were caught, you would be executed. This amnesty deal was thanks to Governor Rogers. In 1719, James Bonny found out about Anne's affair with Jack and asked the governor to punish his wife with a flogging. Jack offered to pay James money to legally divorce Anne, but he refused. At this time, that wasn't an uncommon practice to offer someone money to divorce their wife, seeing as women weren't allowed to get a divorce, and to get a divorce was very expensive because you had to petition Parliament, so really only rich men could afford it. Either way, James denied his request, and I'm not sure if the flogging either Jack took Anne away before it could happen, or Governor Rogers said no, but either way, I'm pretty sure Anne was never flogged. Soon after this, though, Jack and Anne, with the help of other pirates, stole a sloop and took off to be pirates. At some point after stealing the sloop, Anne was dropped off in Cuba for a few months to give birth to Jack's baby and recover before returning to the ship. No one really knows what happened to the baby. It either died or was given to a friend of Jack's to raise. Anne didn't hide her gender on board the ship, which was bold, not only because she was a woman in the 18th century, but because a woman on board a ship was considered bad luck. I could only find one story of Anne being doubted by a fellow crew member, and she challenged him to hand-to-hand combat, ultimately killing him and throwing his body overboard. So it's safe to say that she was not challenged again. Anne wasn't your typical 18th century dainty lady. She fought and swore and drank with all the men, and the other female pirate on board, Mary Read. Unlike Anne, Mary was definitely a real person, although it's unclear when exactly she joined Rackham's crew. I'm not going to give too much information on Mary in this video just because I plan on making another video solely about her, but I will say that she was born in England and she was raised as a boy, so there's a lot to unpack there. She either joined Rackham's crew when they initially stole the sloop from New Providence, or later when Anne was in Cuba giving birth. If it was the latter, then she didn't necessarily join Rackham's crew willingly. She was serving in the army on a Dutch ship that was captured by Calico Jack, and when Calico Jack captured a ship, he forced the crew members of that ship to work for him. Although it is said that when she was given the chance to leave Calico's crew, she didn't. Anne met Mary under the impression that she was a man named Mark Read. There are many stories that come after this regarding their relationship, but mostly everything says that they were engaged in a romantic relationship. It's said that Anne confessed her feelings for Mark, pushing Mary to confess her feelings for Anne and her true identity. After this, both women were openly women on board, although when they knew that they would be engaged in combat, they disguised themselves as men. Like Anne, Mary fought and swore and drank just like all the men. In October of 1720, Governor Rogers put a bounty on Calico Jack and his crew. They had been causing quite a stir in the Caribbean. A privateer named Captain Jonathan Barnett located Jack's ship, and on November 15th, 1720, captured Jack and his whole crew off the coast of Bry Harbor Bay, Jamaica. See, earlier that day, they had just so happened to capture a Spanish galleon full of gold and other treasures, and everyone on board Jack's ship was celebrating with drinking and dancing and music, and the only people on the ship that weren't completely drunk were Anne and Mary. They saw Barnett's ship approaching and tried to rally their troops, but unfortunately, the men of the crew, and I believe Captain Rackham as well, just hid below deck and then surrendered pretty quickly. But Anne and Mary did not go down without a fight, and supposedly, during this time, Anne yelled out, "Dogs! If instead of these weaklings, I only had some women with me." Ultimately, the women were overpowered and the entire Rackham crew was transported to Spanish Town, Jamaica to stand trial. Everyone was found guilty and sentenced to hang. The true identities of the women caused a bit of a stir because a female pirate was unusual, and especially two of them on one ship. To avoid their fates, both women claimed to be pregnant and were kept in prison until it could be confirmed. Meanwhile, all the men of the crew were hanged, and Calico Jack was gibbeted near the entrance of Port Royal as a warning to other pirates. Where he was hung is now known as Rackham's Cay. It's said that before his execution, Jack asked to speak to the mother of his child and was brought to Anne's cell, where she supposedly said, "I'm sorry to see you here, but if you had fought like a man, you need not be hanged like a dog." A lovely goodbye. Very sentimental. Eventually, Anne and Mary's pregnancies were confirmed, and they were given a reprieve until they gave birth. Unfortunately, in April of 1721, Mary came down with a fever, and her unborn child died in prison. Anne's fate, however, is unclear. There's no record of Anne Bonny ever being hung. Some speculate that she died in prison like Mary, but the biggest theory is that her father was able to get her out of prison. She either had Rackham's baby in prison or upon returning to South Carolina with her father. Then, sometime in 1721, Anne married a man named Joseph Burleigh. They had 8 children before Anne died on April 22nd, 1782. This would mean that Anne lived into her 80s, which wasn't impossible back then, but I think it was comparable to living to like 100 today. The mortality rates for women in Europe and the New World in the 1700s were about like 40 to 50 years old, but the mortality rates were always skewed by the infant and child mortality rates. So, I don't know. I still think 80 something is a big deal though. Like, if Al Roker were there, she probably would have ended up on a smoker's jar. Personally, I think that Anne just returning to a mundane life is a little far-fetched. I feel like if she showed that violence in a young age, and then even more violence in her adult pirate career, and got to experience a freedom that most women did not experience at that time, that it would be hard to transition back to like a seemingly normal and dull life without any missteps. And I mean, maybe there were missteps and they're just not recorded. Technically, none of this is recorded, so who knows? But I'm just going off of what we supposedly know about her, and it just seems a little stinky to me. But I'm curious to know what y'all think about Anne Bonny though. Was she even a real person? Let's discuss it in the comments below. And that's the tea on history. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more, and to click the little bell below if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. And if you have any video topic suggestions, please comment them below. I am open to them. As always, I will be linking all of my social medias below so you can keep up with me there. I am most active on my Instagram. And I'm also going to start linking my sources from now on so that you all know where I'm getting my information from, and you can do some research of your own if you want, or whatever else you may want them for. Because there was a new governor in the Caribbean. Personally, I think that Anne just